Hey everyone, welcome to the final part of this series. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to animate a rigged car model along this racetrack and how to animate a camera along this path. I'll also go over my volumetric fog setup, and I will quickly model a building surrounding the track. If you haven't already, make sure you watch the previous video, then come back to this one. For this tutorial, I used an add-on called the Rigacar Addon. I'll leave a link in the description. Make sure you download the Rigacar Addon, install it into Blender, and enable it. You don't actually need this add-on for this tutorial, but for certain parts like making the wheel spin on a car, it can help speed up the process. As always, you can download this blend file on my Patreon. So consider checking out my Patreon. It's the best way to support me as a content creator. Alright. Without further ado, let's get started with the tutorial. Okay, to get started, we're gonna need a rigged car model to animate on our racetrack. So I'm gonna go on a website called SketchFab, and I'm gonna search for NASCAR. We'll checkmark downloadable, and we have a ton of free options we can use here. I'm gonna be using this one here specifically because this one is already rigged for me, so I don't have to rig it. You can use any of these models, but you might have to rig them yourself. I made a rigging tutorial on my channel, you can go check that out. But to make things simple, I'm just gonna use this one, which is already rigged. It was made by Mateusz Wolinski. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, but thank you for the model. And if you check the license, it is a CC attribution non-commercial license, meaning you can't use it for any of your commercial projects, but you can use it for your personal projects. So I'll be using it for the tutorial. Go ahead and click download. The original file is a blend file, which is great because we are using Blender. So go ahead and download that and then save it into a folder. Go back to your Blender scene, click your race car collection, click File, Append, and then go to wherever you saved your car model. I saved it right here. It's the Chevrolet blend file. Double click, click on Source, and it should look like this. If you double click it and then go into Objects, you can hit A and then append the car. Zoom in on it. We'll move it to a new collection. M, new collection, we'll call it NASCARs. We don't need any of these. Click on the rig, hit N, let's center it out. I believe it's a bit too big for the track. I'll hit S, Control, scale it down a bit. Go into pose mode, select this blue part here, go to bone constraints, follow path. We're gonna animate it on the lane 2 curve. Material preview to see what's going on. If you wanna animate it on this path here, the flat one, you can just change the target to main lane curve. But we're going to animate it on the lane 2 curve because I think it looks much cooler. To adjust the rotation, hit R and Y. We want to move it above the ground so the tires don't clip through the road mesh. Let's go to frame 1, do fixed position, follow curve, -Y. Now if you adjust the offset factor, it'll move the position of the car all around the track. On frame 1, add a keyframe with the offset at 0. Let's go to frame 400. I tested that on frame 400, the car is traveling at a speed of 130 kilometers per hour, which looks great on camera. Adjust the offset factor to 1 and add a keyframe on frame 400. If you can't see the keyframes, just scroll up and there they are. Now if you zoom out and hit play, you can see the car is traveling around the track. Let's go back into object mode. Let's click on the racetrack. Let's add a camera to follow the car. Shift A, camera, hit N, zero out the rotation. Go to constraints, follow path constraint. The target is going to be lane 2 curve because the car is on the lane 2 curve. Fixed position, follow curve, -Y. Go into camera view. Let's adjust the position of the camera by using the transformation settings. Let's go on frame 1. I'm going to have the camera start a bit away from the car. I want the focal length to be 20 millimeters because then we see more of the track, more of a wider shot. Okay, I think this is going to be the starting position. Now to make the camera follow the car, click on the camera. Let's go to the constraint properties and we'll do the same thing. We'll add a keyframe on frame 1 and then we'll go to frame 400 and make the offset factor 1. Add keyframe. Now if you play, the camera will be following the car. But we need some more camera movement. So I'm gonna have the animation start from where the car starts to turn. It starts to turn at around frame 40. So I'll start the animation at frame 40. Let's go to the object properties. And this is where I'm gonna start the camera movement. Well, first I'm going to adjust this rotation. I'll actually bring it a bit closer. I think I like this starting position. I'll add a keyframe by hitting I and I on the location and rotation. Let's go to the end of the animation, which is 120 for me. And I'll move the camera closer to the car. This will be the final position. Hit I and I to add in those keyframes. Now if you hit play, this is the camera animation. Let's go ahead and click on the car rig. And let's add in some tire movement because right now the wheels are not spinning. So if you have the Rigacar add-on enabled, you could go into pose mode, hit A, and then N. We'll go to the Rigacar add-on right here, and we'll do bake wheels rotation. This will rotate the wheels automatically. And as you can see, they are spinning. Alternatively, if the Rigacar add-on doesn't work for you, you can also spin the wheels manually. Go into pose mode, click on the green part here, which controls the wheels, go to the bone properties, and on this X rotation, you can spin the wheels manually. So on frame 1, you can add a keyframe, and then on frame 120, you could set the spinning to be 25,000. Repeat the same process on the back wheel, so select this green bone, go to your bone properties, and you could set this, you can add a keyframe on frame 1, and then if you go to frame 120, or whatever your animation ends, set this to 25,000. Also, if you absolutely want to make sure this car model sticks to the ground of your road mesh, you can use the ground sensors here. But you're going to run into an issue. If you try to make the car stick to the ground using the Rigacar add-on's ground sensors, you'll notice that you'll run into a small issue. So as you can see, I'm using my lane 2 as my ground, but the car is still floating in the air. And the reason for that is because if you remember at the beginning of the tutorial, we ended up scaling the model down. So in order for the ground sensors to work, it needs to be back to its original scale. So once it's back to its original scale, it'll stick to the ground as per usual. So just keep that in mind. If you want to use the Rigacar add-on's ground sensors, make sure your rigged car model was at its original scale. However, I'm not going to use the ground sensors here, so I'm just going to delete the ground sensors and put my car back to 0.8. This is because at its original scale, I think the car is too big, but at this scale, I think the car looks completely fine, so I'm just going to stick with this. Next, I'm going to add in some camera shake. So let's go back into object mode, click on your camera. Let's go to the graph editor, open up the object transformation. We're going to add some noise modifiers to the X and Z rotation. So let's start with the X rotation. Let's go to modifiers. Let's add a noise modifier. That's way too strong, so the strength is going to be 0.02. That's better. Now let's add a noise modifier to the Z rotation as well. Again, that's way too strong, so to smooth it out, we'll adjust the scale first. That's smooth, but again, the strength is too much, so the strength is going to be 0.1. Maybe even 0.08. That's much better. Now I want to add in some more vehicles into the mix. Let's go back to frame 1. For more vehicles, I'm going to be using the transportation add-on. The transportation add-on gives me over 78 different vehicles to use, high quality, realistic materials. They also give me the option to either use the HD version or the low poly for each vehicle. So I'm going to be going with the low poly because these vehicles are going to be in the distance and not the main focus of my animation. So I'll choose this rally car right here. I'll choose the low poly version and then I'll add vehicle. I'll make sure it's editable for animation. Then I'll go into pose mode. I'll click on the vehicle. I'll go into pose mode and I'll just repeat the steps. So again, bone constraints, follow path, lane 2 curve, and zoom in on it. We'll do fixed position, follow curve, -Y. And we don't want to move it on the Y axis. we can move the position on the x-axis. So just select the bottom portion, hit G and then X. So with this car model, I want to make it stick to the ground here. We can do that by using the Rigacar add-on. If you go to the Rigacar add-on, you can use these ground sensors here and make this car stick to the ground. Let's just fix this bone here. RY. Okay, and now it's sticking to the ground. So once you have your new car positioned correctly, we're gonna add in a keyframe on frame 1, and then again, we'll go on frame 400, we'll add in a keyframe, we'll make the offset factor 1, and then add a keyframe. Now, if you go into camera mode and play your animation, you can see they are both traveling at the same speed. Now, if you want the car to be more in the distance, your new car, all you have to do is again, select the rig here while in pose mode, and then you're gonna go ahead and you can change this keyframe on frame 400 to like 450. So now if you hit play, it's a bit behind the car. If you want it further back, you could move this keyframe even further. All right, I need a building to surround this entire track. So let's make a building quickly. Let's go click on the racetrack collection. Let's do Shift A. Let's add in a mesh circle. Let's go to top view and let's scale it up. I'm gonna make it 358 meters wide and 506 meters long. Go into edit mode, go to vertex select mode, hit F to add in a new face, and then E to extrude. We'll make it 50 meters tall. With the face select tool, select this face, hit P, separate selection. Go back into object mode, select your new object, hit F2, and this is gonna be the glass dome. Go into edit mode, select the face, hit E to extrude up. We'll make it 5 meters tall. And then S, and we'll scale it in just a bit. Let's drag and open up a new window. Go to the shader editor, hit N, and let's add in a new material. Let's go into material preview. Let's select this glass dome. New material, we'll call it glass dome. Delete the principal BSDF. Shift A, add a glass BSDF and a transparent BSDF. Make sure you choose transparent and not translucent. We're adding a transparent BSDF because we want some light to leak through the glass. To mix these two, we'll add in a mix shader. Factor is going to be 0.717. Give a material to the base building. Shade auto smooth. Okay, now we're going to need some volumetric fog similar to what you saw in my final render. Shift A, cube, go to top view, wireframe, and scale it till it covers the entire building. The height is going to be 80 meters. Select your building here and your glass dome and make sure it is below the racetrack. Rename your cube here to fog. Add a new material, call the material fog. Delete this, Shift A, add in a principal volume. Plug that into the volume. Go to your render properties and important, make sure under your light paths, under your max bounces, make sure the volume is at 1 or 2. I keep it at max 2. This is so you can see the volumetric fog in your final render. This is too dense, so let's adjust the density to be 0.03. Now it's less dense. Let's go into camera view to see what it's looking like. And so far, it's a bit too dark, so let's adjust the anisotropy. That's a little bit better, but it's still too dark. So let's go to our world properties. I'm using the sky texture from the previous tutorial. We'll adjust the strength to be 3. Much brighter. I'm gonna do a quick test render. So for my render settings, I'm using cycles. I'm using my GPU, highly recommended for faster renders. Make sure it's enabled, by the way, under your system settings. Make sure it's checked here. Max samples is gonna be at 300. Noise threshold is 0.01. For now, I'm gonna be using the denoise, but in the final render, I'm gonna actually use another option. Again, your light paths, make sure your volume is at 2. I'm gonna be using motion blur. Color management is gonna be AGX, and the look is gonna be high contrast. Persistent data is checked. Oh, and on your fog material, make sure the color is a blue tint and you turn up the brightness over here. Okay, now let's do a test render, render image. By the way, I actually did medium high contrast instead of high contrast. High contrast might be a bit too dark, so I went with medium high contrast. But I am going to be compositing this in DaVinci Resolve, so this really doesn't matter. I usually just leave this on none, and I do my compositing in DaVinci Resolve. Okay, let's make some final adjustments. First, I'm going to select this car and actually have it start a bit ahead of the main car here, my main NASCAR here. Also, I'm going to have this car, the frame is going to end at 383. So if I go into camera view, this car passes the camera first, and then the main car comes into frame like this. And there seems to be a bit of a jitter, so I'm actually gonna have the animation start at frame 49. Yep. Let's go back to frame 1. Let's select this tire right here, and it's a bit too in, so I'm gonna bring it out by hitting G and then X. Let's go ahead and select the entire rig. Let's bake the wheels rotation. Now the wheels should be spinning. They are. Okay, here is my final render setup. I'm rendering from frame 49 all the way up to frame 123. I also have these area light instances spread all throughout the track. If you click on the area light instance and go under it, click this area light here, which controls the entire power. And I set the power to 400. The size is at 17. Everything else remains default. This is what it looks like in rendered mode. And if you turn on denoise, you can get a sense of what it's going to look like. My final render settings are as follows. If you go to the render properties, the max samples is set to 300. I'm using denoise, open image denoise, and I'm using my GPU for faster denoising. Noise threshold is at 0.01. For my max bounces under my light paths, the volume is set to 2, and everything else is, I believe, default. Motion blur is on. Persistent data, I'm using AGX, medium high contrast. Resolution set to 100%, render region, crop to render region. And I am ready for the final animation. I'll go to my output settings and make sure to find a folder to save this on. You can make a new folder and call it shot 1. And then just save it in here. Then just hit render animation. Okay, let me show you what the final render looks like. Go to the plus icon, go to video editing. Let's go to add in the image sequence that you just rendered out. Mine is right here, shot 1 denoised. Hit A and import in the entire image strip. If you hit play, this is what it looks like. Now, what I usually do after this is I import this entire image sequence into DaVinci Resolve and do all my compositing in DaVinci Resolve. But that pretty much ends this tutorial here. If you enjoyed this series, consider checking out my Patreon. I have a previous tutorial posted on there on how I composite my Blender renders in a free program called DaVinci Resolve. You'll also get access to all my past and future tutorial project files as well. Make sure to hit that like button right now and subscribe to see more tutorials like this. It's been your boy, Only RJ, and I will see you all in the next tutorial. Peace.